My son told me I was no longer capable of managing my own affairs. He was wearing that blue polo shirt I bought him for his birthday 3 years ago. I remember thinking how strange it was to notice something like that. The shirt, the way it pulled slightly at the buttons because he put on weight. I was sitting at my own kitchen table, in my own house, and my son was explaining to me, calmly, the way you explain things to someone who is confused, that it would be easier for everyone if he took over my finances. I was 67 years old. I had run a household, raised 2 children, managed a bookkeeping job for 22 years, and balanced my own checkbook every single month since 1978. But sure, easier for everyone. His name is Daniel. He is 41 years old and he has never once in his entire life balanced a checkbook. I should tell you about the house first, because that's where this story ends up. It's a 3-bedroom colonial on Maple Creek Road in Clarksburg, Ohio. I've lived there for 34 years. My late husband Gerald and I bought it in 1991 for $112,000. We painted the shutters together, forest green, and Gerald fell off the ladder the second time and sprained his wrist, and we laughed about it for years after. The kitchen still has the original tile backsplash, the one I picked out from a catalogue while Gerald was at work. The one he pretended not to like, but never changed. The backyard has a white oak tree that is probably older than the neighborhood itself. In the fall, when the leaves come down, the whole yard goes gold. Gerald died 6 years ago. Heart attack, fast, the doctors said, as if that was supposed to be a comfort, and I suppose in some ways it was. After he passed, Daniel started calling more. I appreciated that at first. He'd check in on Sunday evenings, ask how I was eating, whether I'd had the gutters cleaned. Ordinary things. Nice things. I thought losing his father had made him more attentive. I thought grief had softened him. I should have paid closer attention to what he was actually asking. It started with the investment accounts. Daniel works in finance. Not high finance. He'd be offended if he heard me say that. But he manages a small portfolio for a regional firm outside Columbus. He knows enough about money to sound confident when he talks about it. That confidence can be hard to argue with, especially when you're still learning to do things alone. Mom, you've got money just sitting in that savings account earning nothing. Let me move it somewhere it'll actually grow. I thought about it. I told him I'd think about it more. He asked again the following Sunday, and the Sunday after that. In November of 2022, I signed a power of attorney. Daniel had a notary come to the house. I remember she had red hair and a very firm handshake, and she was in and out in under 20 minutes. I signed the papers at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped my children with homework, where Gerald and I had drunk our coffee every morning for 25 years. I signed, and I thought I was just making things simpler, easier for everyone. That phrase. I keep coming back to it. What I did not know, what Daniel did not explain, or perhaps chose not to explain, was that the power of attorney he had drawn up was broad, very broad. It gave him authority over my bank accounts, my investment accounts, and my real property. All of it. Every asset I had spent a lifetime accumulating was now legally within his reach. I want to be fair. I don't think Daniel started out planning to steal from me. I think he started out believing he was helping. I think somewhere in the middle, helping and having access got confused in his mind. And then I think he just kept going. The first sign was small, a withdrawal I didn't make, $400 from my checking account in December. I called the bank and they confirmed it had been authorized through the POA. I called Daniel. Oh, that was for the gutter cleaning, Mom, remember? I paid the guy for you. I did not remember asking him to do that, but I also wasn't sure I hadn't. Memory plays tricks when you're grieving and living alone and 67 years old, so I let it go. The second sign was less small. In February, my investment account showed a transfer of $12,000 to an account I didn't recognize. I called Daniel immediately. He explained at length in that calm voice that he had moved the funds to a higher yield vehicle on my behalf, that it was perfectly legal, that he had every right to do it under the POA, and that I should trust him because he did this professionally. I said I wanted to see the account information. He said he'd send it over. He didn't. I want to tell you about my daughter-in-law, Sandra, because she is part of this story whether she wants to be or not. Sandra has been married to Daniel for 14 years. She is a pleasant enough woman in small doses, good at parties, good at making things look nice, the kind of person who always has the right thing to say at the right moment. What she is not good at is honesty. Or rather, she is very good at a certain kind of honesty, the kind that comes packaged as concern. "We just worry about you, Lorraine," she would say when she came by the house. That's my name. Lorraine. This house is a lot for one person to manage. She always looked around when she said it. Not at me. At the house. In March, Daniel asked me to think about downsizing. In April, he sent me listings for Sycamore Ridge, a retirement community 20 minutes outside Clarksburg. Nice enough place. Clean. Activities. A dining room with white tablecloths. The kind of place where people go when someone has decided their living situation needs to be managed. "Just look at them," he said. "No pressure." I looked at them. And then I called my friend Harriet. Harriet and I have been friends since 1989. We met in a community Bible study and have been talking on the phone twice a week ever since. She was there when Gerald died. She brought food for 2 straight weeks and didn't ask me to be okay before I was. If there is a person on this earth who has my best interests at heart, it's Harriet. "Lorraine," she said when I told her about the withdrawals and the transfer and the listings for Sycamore Ridge, "you need a lawyer." I told her I didn't want to make a big deal out of nothing. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Honey, this is not nothing. I made an appointment the following week with an attorney named Mr. Fielding, a quiet man in his late 50s who worked out of a small office on Main Street and had a framed photo of a Labrador retriever on his desk. He listened to everything I told him. He asked to see the POA documents and the bank statements. He was quiet while he read them. "This is a broad grant of authority," he said. "Yes," I said, "you can revoke it." I looked at him. "At any time," he said. "As long as you are mentally competent, and you clearly are, you have the right to revoke this. It's your property. It was always your property." I'm not ashamed to tell you that I cried a little then. Not from sadness exactly, from something closer to relief, from the feeling of having the ground come back under your feet. I revoked the power of attorney on a Thursday. Mr. Fielding filed the paperwork, and I left his office with a copy in my purse and drove home on the highway, with the windows down, even though it was only 52 degrees, because I needed the air. What I didn't know was that Daniel, in the 6 weeks before I revoked the POA, had already contracted with a real estate firm to list my house. I found out on a Friday afternoon. I was deadheading the rosebushes in the front yard when a neighbour, Ruth Ann Peterson, she lives 3 houses down and has always been the kind of person who knows everything, came walking down the sidewalk with her little dog. "Lorraine," she said, in that careful voice people use when they're not sure whether you already know, "I saw your house listed online this morning. I set down the pruning shears. Pardon me, on the county property listings. It's been submitted for auction." She paused. "I thought maybe you were moving. I wanted to say goodbye, just in case." I went inside. I sat down at the kitchen table. I pulled up the county website on my laptop and typed in my address. There it was, 4417 Maple Creek Road, listed for public auction in 31 days. My house. My house. I sat there for a long time without moving. The kitchen was quiet. The afternoon light came in sideways through the window over the sink and landed on the tile backsplash, the one I'd chosen from the catalogue in 1992. And I thought about Gerald falling off the ladder. I thought about my kids doing homework at this table. I thought about all the ordinary Tuesday evenings that had happened inside these walls, and then I stopped feeling sad and started feeling something else entirely. I called Mr. Fielding that same afternoon. He confirmed what I feared, even though the POA had been revoked. Daniel had filed the auction paperwork before the revocation was processed. The listing was, technically, still valid. Untangling it legally was possible, but would take time, potentially longer than the 31 days before the auction. So what do? I asked. There was a pause. Well, Mr. Fielding said slowly, you could attend the auction. As a bidder, as the rightful owner. Yes, I thought about that. And if I win, I said, I get my own house back. Yes, at whatever price it goes for. And Daniel, another pause, would have to return whatever funds were moved without your explicit consent, plus interest. If he contests it, we have grounds. The revocation, the timing of the filing, the broad POA. It's not a comfortable position for him legally. I thanked Mr. Fielding. I hung up the phone. And then I did something I had not done in a very long time. I made a plan. I called my granddaughter Annie the next morning. She's 24, Daniel's daughter, but she and I have always had our own relationship, separate from whatever is happening between me and her father. Annie came to visit me most Sundays when she was in college. She showed up with coffee and sat at this same kitchen table and told me about her classes and her friends and the things she was figuring out about herself. And I listened, and we understood each other in the quiet way that sometimes skips a generation. When I told her what was happening, she went silent. "Grandma," she said finally, "Dad did that. He did." More silence. And then, "What do you need?" I told her I needed to get to the auction. I told her I needed a cashier's check because I'd already spoken with my bank, my own account in my name, that Daniel had never had access to. A small account I'd kept for 30 years for reasons I could never fully explain, out of some old Depression-era instinct that Gerald used to tease me about. Turned out it wasn't such a bad instinct after all. Annie offered to drive me. I told her she didn't have to. She said she wanted to. I told her I might embarrass her. She said she'd take her chances. The auction was held on a Tuesday morning at the county office building in Clarksburg, a beige room with fluorescent lights and rows of metal folding chairs, the kind of room that looks the same all over America. There were maybe 30 people there, some browsing phones, some holding numbered paddles. A man at the front in a grey suit was running through logistics in a rapid, business-like voice. Daniel arrived 8 minutes after Annie and I did. He did not see us right away. He was with Sandra, who was wearing a cream-coloured blazer and carrying a travel mug, and they were talking to each other in the low, comfortable way of people who believe they are in charge of the situation. Daniel had a paddle in his hand. He was going to bid on my house. His plan, I later understood, was to buy below market at the auction, sell it privately at full price, and pocket the difference, with the story ready that he was just protecting his mother's asset. The kind of scheme that works when no one looks closely. He looked up and saw me. I watched his face go through several things in very quick order. Surprise, confusion, something almost like guilt, before it closed off into the expression I knew well. The composed, slightly patronizing look that said he was still, somehow, the one who understood the situation better than I did. "Mum," he came over immediately. "What are you doing here?" "I'm attending an auction," I said. "You don't need to be here." "This is my house," I said. "Yes, I know." Sandra touched his arm. He looked at her. Some communication passed between them that I wasn't meant to read. "Mum," he said again more quietly, "why don't we step outside and talk?" "The auction is about to start," I said. Annie, beside me, said nothing. She just sat very straight in her metal chair and looked at her father with an expression I had not seen on her face before. Not angry. Something quieter than that. Disappointed, maybe. The particular disappointment of someone whose understanding of a person has just shifted permanently. Daniel went back to his seat. The auction began. There were 4 properties before mine. I sat through each one with my cashier's check in my purse and my hands folded in my lap. Annie had brought me a coffee in a paper cup, and I held it without drinking it, because my stomach would not have managed it. The fluorescent lights hummed. The man in the grey suit called out numbers in his rapid voice. When he called 42417 Maple Creek Road, my whole body went still. The bidding started at 140,000. A man in the second row opened at 145. Someone near the back went to 150. Daniel raised his paddle at 155. I raised mine at 160. There was a pause. I heard Sandra say something quietly. Daniel looked at me, not the composed look this time, something else. He raised his paddle again. 165. I raised mine. 155. I raised mine. 170. 175. 180. He stopped. I don't think he'd brought enough. Or maybe he just didn't have the nerve to keep going. I'll never know which. 180. Going once, the man in the grey suit said. Going twice. I looked straight ahead at the water-stained ceiling tiles and thought about the white oak tree in my backyard. I thought about Gerald's handwriting in the margins of the paperback novels he used to leave on the nightstand. I thought about 34 years of ordinary life inside the walls of a house that was mine, sold. Annie squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. After the paperwork was processed, and there was quite a lot of paperwork, and Mr. Fielding's associate was there to handle most of it. Daniel tried one more time. He found me in the hallway, outside the auction room, without Sandra this time. "Mum, I hope you know I was trying to look out for you." I looked at my son, who had stood in my kitchen with that calm, patient expression and explained things to me as if I were a child, who had moved money I'd spent a lifetime saving without telling me, who had listed my home for auction without asking me. "Daniel," I said, "I know what you were doing." He started to say something else. "I've changed my will," I said. He stopped. "I spoke with Mr. Fielding last week. Annie will receive the house. The remaining assets will go to a charitable trust to be distributed at my discretion. You will receive what I choose to give you, which right now is not very much." His face did something complicated. He looked, for a moment, younger than he had in years, like the boy he used to be, standing in my kitchen in the summer, asking me what was for dinner. "Mum, you can earn your way back," I said. "That's not a door I'm closing, but I'm the one who decides when it opens, not you." I walked back to where Annie was waiting. She'd been watching from down the hall, far enough to give us privacy, close enough if I needed her. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said, and I was mostly. "Let's go home." We drove back on the same highway I'd taken after Mr. Fielding's office the day I'd driven with the windows down in 52-degree weather. This time it was warmer, and I didn't need the air, but I rolled the window down anyway. Old habit. Or maybe just because I could. The house on Maple Creek Road looked the same as it always had when we pulled into the driveway. Forest green shutters. White oak dropping the first of its spring leaves across the front walk. The rose bushes I'd been deadheading when Ruth Ann came down the sidewalk with her dog and changed everything. I stood on the porch for a minute before going inside. 34 years. Gerald's handwriting. The tile backsplash I chose from a catalogue. The table where homework got done and coffee got drunk, and a woman of 67 signed papers she should have read more carefully and then spent 3 months finding her way back. Nobody gets to tell you when your story is over. I opened the door and went inside. I still think about that blue polo shirt sometimes. The one Daniel was wearing at my kitchen table the day he told me I was no longer capable of managing my own life. I bought him that shirt. I washed it, wrapped it, handed it to him with a card, and he wore it the morning he started taking things from me. That's not bitterness talking. That's just what happened, and I've made peace with looking at it clearly. What I understand now, and I wish I'd understood sooner, is that the moment I stopped trusting my own judgment was the moment the door opened. Not because I was weak, because I was grieving and tired, and I confused someone's confidence for someone's honesty. Those are two very different things. Daniel knew how to sound certain. That's a skill. But knowing how to sound certain is not the same as being right, and it is not the same as being good. I spent a long time after Gerald died being quieter than I should have been, deferring, letting things slide because I didn't want to cause trouble, didn't want to seem difficult, didn't want to be the kind of old woman who makes a fuss. What I didn't see was that my silence wasn't kindness. It was a door I kept leaving open, and eventually someone walked through it. The thing about a power of attorney is that it's a piece of paper that only means what the people holding it decide it means. The thing about a cashier's check is that it's real. The thing about showing up to that auction room and raising my paddle, that was the most real thing I'd done in years. Not because I won. Because I decided. I looked at a situation that had been arranged without my input or my consent, and I decided what I was going to do about it. That decision didn't come from nowhere. It came from Harriet, who told me this is not nothing. It came from Mr. Parrott, Fielding, who said you can revoke it. It came from Annie, who asked, "What do you need? Not what should we do? Not let me handle it, but what do you need?" It came, eventually, from me, from whatever part of me had kept a small bank account in my own name for 30 years out of an instinct I couldn't explain. Trust that instinct, whatever version of it you have. The quiet voice that says something is wrong before you can prove it. The hand that holds on to something just in case. That's not paranoia. That's wisdom that accumulates slowly the way most real things do. I told Daniel he could earn his way back. I meant it. Not because what he did was small. It wasn't. But because I know something about what people do when they're scared and greedy and haven't thought far enough ahead. He got there by convincing himself he was helping. People do terrible things that way. Understanding that doesn't excuse it. It just means I don't have to carry it like a stone in my chest. Annie drove me home that afternoon. We didn't talk much. The windows were down and the spring air came through, and I watched the fields go by on Route 40 and thought, this is mine. Not the fields, the afternoon. The choice I'd made. The door I was walking back through. Nobody decides when you're finished. That's the thing I most want to say. Not your children, not a legal document, not the fear that comes with living alone and getting older. You are the one who decides. And if someone has temporarily taken that from you, you can take it back. I walked into my house on Maple Creek Road and put my keys on the same hook I've used since 1991. Gerald put that hook there. It's still level after all these years. Some things hold,